Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is our annual budget summit. And at this time, I'll open up the meeting and ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll just probably make it easy, and we're just going to go right around the table, and everybody can introduce each other. Starting with you, Ted.
Ted Novio, school committee member, Millville representative.
Tara Larkin, school committee member, Millville rep.
Tara Scobie, school committee member, Blackstone.
Harry Gaudette, school committee member, Blackstone.
Matt Catalano, school committee member, Millville.
Mike Sweeney, Blackstone Board of Selectmen.
Tanya Pollock, Blackstone Board of Selectmen.
Rhea Bolso, Blackstone Board of Selectmen.
Lauren Taylor, assistant town administrator, town accountant for the town of Blackstone.
Chad Lovett, Town Administrator from Blackstone.
Chuck Johnson, school committee member, Blackstone.
Jeff Silverstein, Chair of Finance Committee and Capital Outlay.
Joe Baker, Board of Selectmen, Millville.
Matthew Maley, Millville Selectmen.
Peter Caruso, Millville Town Administrator and Chair of the Capital Committee.
Andrew Elwood, Millville Board of Selectmen.
Claudette Barrett, Finance Committee, Millville, Chair.
Judy Monroe, Millville Finance Committee.
Joe Spada, Director of Finance and Operations for Blackstone Millville.
Jill Piligallerani, assistant superintendent, director of student services.
And Jason DeFalco, superintendent. And I'm Dan Keefe, Blackstone rep, school committee. All right, moving forward, review and discuss Blackstone Millville Regional School District FY26 budget. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be together. Good to see everyone all in one place. For our, I think we'll dub this meeting now our annual summit. Is that what you call it?
It is now.
It's great. Look forward to this conversation every year because it gives us an opportunity to, of course, talk about the needs of the school system, but also, I would argue, just as important, it gives us an opportunity to talk about the successes. And we are only able to achieve the successes that we have through the support of everybody around this table. And of course, our larger community, parents, our educators, and most importantly, our students. So very grateful to be here with everyone tonight to talk about a very important issue. And so with that, in front of you, you have a few different pieces of information. You have a copy of the slide deck that we're going to walk through. In that slide deck, there are some handouts and materials that will go over. And those of you that have been with us for a budget cycle or more, in many cases, the documents will look very familiar. We've tried to stick to a very consistent format. But included in the PowerPoint is an overview of our budget for FY26, our draft budget, an overview of the assessment sheet that we will talk about. Also, a breakdown by major cost center. I know that's something that's been many of you have been interested in the past, so we just included that in this year's presentation. And also the first of a 5-year overview of our capital plan. I say the first year because we do have years 2 through 5 built out, but in your packet is just year 1, and that we'll speak a little bit to later regarding what the school committee has prioritized in that 5-year capital plan. This evening, helping review all the information tonight will be Jill and Joe and Jason. So the J's will be presenting the information tonight. But as we're going, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we look forward to getting started. First and foremost, probably the most important document we have in our school system, that's our improvement strategy. Everything comes back to this. What is listed here as our 5 C's, these are the promises to our learners, to our graduates. You might have heard the term portrait of a graduate or portrait of a learner. That's where these came from. These came from a working group of stakeholders from across all groups in our school system. I spend a lot of time thinking about what are the promises that we make to our students who graduate from BMR every year. And of course, something to us that is more than just a tagline, but is truly how we function and approach our work. We are working on being a school system where everyone is welcome and belongs. and we value diversity and inclusivity with that. So the other guiding structures to really help pull together our budget is not as simple as just saying to our cost center managers, what do you need? But there's actually some guiding structures that we use. Of course, the first is our strategy, which we just talked about. Our blueprint is the name for our strategic plan, and we are actually in our last year of our current blueprint. So as we move forward into next school year, we will have a newly revised strategic plan or blueprint that we'll be implementing. So you hear a little bit about that later. Our end of year 2024 accountability and MCAS results. We have a lot to be proud of as far as our overall achievement and growth, and we'll talk about that. We believe that's an important piece of information to review with everybody because that's our return on investment. So how are we doing with our kids? How are they performing? And so Jill's going to actually get into a bit more detail about that. The end of school year feedback from our school committee. The school committee has a very thorough evaluation process that they do every year. It's actually multiple stages. Starts with a data review. We look at and establish goals. We have a mid-year evaluation, and then we have an end-of-year evaluation. So the school committee takes that process very seriously, and we use that data to help inform where we go next with our work. And of course, equally as important are community surveys. We survey all of our students in grades 2 through 12. We survey our families and all of our staff. And we take all of that feedback and we use that feedback to help inform where we're going. These are important to mention because sometimes we might see something and not really understand where it comes from as far as either a new material or program or a new position. We take all these pieces into consideration when we're putting our budget together. Yeah.
So this slide is probably familiar to a lot of you. This is our student demographics. We always have some updates. So you can see our students by race. We also identified our English language learner students, and I'll get into that. We are seeing an increase in our student population in that area, which also drives our budget. Our students with special needs, it's pretty stable over the years. High needs, but also if you look at that low income, you'll notice we're right now at 41.8%, and that has climbed about 16% over the past 5 years, and that's come up with that families that actually are reporting their data. There are some families who still don't, but that is an area, again, that's continuing to be on the rise. So again, I'm not going to go over every of those, you can see those, but again, our student overall. Yep.
So is the high need students and students with special needs, are those mutually exclusive?
No, you'll see when I get in, it'll show you in a slide
Okay.
what that means for the student population. They fit into many categories.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, our state determined measures. Again, it's not a new slide. We are continuing to make moderate progress toward our goals as in the district. And we have no schools within our district that required any state assistance or intervention. And I just want to give you a little detail about that. So there is the Department of Education, there's a comprehensive accountability system, and they look at each district across the state, and they look at things like MCAS, they look at attendance, they look at student participation, they look at a variety of fields to identify, are we a district that is in the bottom 25%, or are we in the lower percent compared to school districts like us. We are not a school at all that's being identified in that area. And the other thing that they also look at us for accountability is our tiered focus monitoring, which seem to be here all the time, every year, almost every day. But they also look at, besides our student data, our data as a district. They we do tiered focus monitoring in special education, civil rights, educational stability, our English language learner population, our titles grants that we get. Those are yearly, and we actually just had a few over the last couple of years. We were in full compliance. And also our yearly indicators that they look at. They always look at our kiddo data coming in and how they've been addressed in their progress, and they look at our students that are leaving us, and those are done on a yearly basis, and there hasn't been any findings in any of those areas, which is really great. And again, you'll see here our 4-year graduation, our dropout rate. There's been a lot of focus on those areas that we're trying to get those either higher when it comes to the graduation rate or lower when it comes to the dropout. And those have really been targeted areas that our guidance department's been working on. You can see here again, this information isn't new. I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see that our student performance within the cluster of grades is right within that state average. And the bottom three notes you can see are areas that we actually exceeded targets as a district when it came to our science, when it came to our absenteeism targets, and also for our English language students actually exceeded what our targets were this year.
If I could just, back when, in 17, when you come on in 17?
18.
18. Going back to the requiring any state assistance or intervention, was that the case when you?
We had quite a few findings that had come up through Office of Civil Rights, Special Education, our title grants, and over the series of the first few years, we were able to work through all those issues, put everything in place that we needed to, and we have no findings, and we're not being monitored for
And it
anything.
hasn't been, it's been the case for the last several years?
Yep, that's correct.
It has. And like I said, I know I've mentioned at a school committee meeting, our district with our English language learners, we actually, myself and our lead coach were actually asked to present at the Office for Language Acquisition presentations in person and online for the work that we've been doing with our kiddos, because we are a low incident district and a lot of low incident districts aren't able to do the work that we do. So it was really nice that we were honored in that way. Things that are driving our budget. You can see we're always just over that 1,500 mark. My department also oversees our Welcome Center, and it seems like on a regular basis we're having new students enroll in our district, which is great. You can see here just under 50% of our students, Jennifer, I think you asked if the high needs. So they fall into that category. If they're economically disadvantaged, special needs, they have more than one category, they fall into that realm.
Thank you.
Is that, excuse me, how comparable is that to surrounding towns, the percentage?
Of high need students?
Yes.
We're more in line as far as the high needs percentage with Northbridge. Milford's higher than ours, but our immediate bordering, Uxbridge, Bellingham, Hopedale, that number is much lower.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
And with that said, if you look at, I'm just going to go back to our MPAS performance a bit. Our higher needs students and our students of low income and our students who have some significant challenge are actually outperforming the state in their growth, which is really nice to see. So if you look here, we're also seeing an increase in our student enrollment. Like I told you, it's actually daily. We're getting new folks who are joining us. Our students with English language learners, actually last year we had the year started off about 41 students and we're up to 72. So I anticipate that's probably going to double by the end of this year. We have had increased students who are outplaced, but I want to make it very clear, the majority of our students who have come in actually over the last 2 years who weren't placed by us. They were either move-in students or they were placed by outside agencies. We've worked really hard in this district to build our programs within, but what has happened is we are doing that, but some of the new students coming into our district have already been outplaced. So unfortunately, has increased our numbers over the last 2 years. Also, we are looking to maintain our class size, so you'll hear a little bit more later on this presentation about staffing that we would like to add. We are looking to increase our English language learner teachers by 0.4. We currently have 2.6, and with our increase, we're looking to make that 3 with the 0.4. As Jason mentioned before, we talked about our district strategic plan that is always guiding the work that we do. We are looking to reinforce our core literacy programs. We're making some adjustments, and we're also working to strengthen our writing across the districts with programs. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more of the implementation of our revised 5-year capital plan.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Out of curiosity, for the increased enrollment for the language learner supports as needed, what languages, I guess, are the top, like, most needed?
Right now, the highest population of languages are Portuguese and Spanish, but we do have several, and I can get those. I know in my school committee presentation, I've listed them all. We have quite a few. We have a lot of students who speak Mandarin, but I would say right now the top is Portuguese and Spanish.
I think the last, the last school committee meeting we addressed this on was like 17 or 19
Yes,
different
we have
languages.
quite a few different languages.
And also, that 1,500 number, I'm being in selectmen or whatever for the last several years, we watched the enrollment decline. That 1,500 number has been pretty consistent over the last three years, which is good that more kids are staying.
Correct. Okay. And just some of the other factors driving, of course, our health insurance increases. I know that, that's an ongoing review, and assessment of healthcare options. Our collaborative and private tuition, there is an increase, and we were hoping for a 5%. It looks like it could be as high as 10 to 14%. And then we also have, as I mentioned before, increased due to our overall enrollment in our district of students who are already outplaced. Facility needs, I'm sure we've talked about that over and over at the high school, as well as some of our short-term capital projects. What goes into this too, some of our factors, we have the faculty and staff, our contractual obligations, our MLC, our minimum local contribution, it continues to increase every year, the expectation from the town, and of course our transportation costs.
So budget process to date. Again, those of you that have been through a few budget cycles with us, this is not at all different than what we've done in the past as far as using those driving documents. Meeting with our cost center managers, we start this process back in October, late October. Going through each specific cost center with each cost center manager, so our principals and directors. We do not just let folks know here, this is your lump sum, or just take what you did last year and add X percent. That is not at all how that works. We then present to the school committee in December what we think, it's still early in the process, but what we think the main priorities will be in terms of, we kind of jokingly call it staff and stuff. Like, so if there's any new positions or if any new materials, what are those positions and materials? So we do an early kind of preview of that in December. January, we get real deep into the weeds. So the first meeting in January with school committee, we're in the detail. We're looking at all of the function code lines, what the anticipated increases will be in each area, and then from there we hold usually 2 to 3 workshops. We had 3 this year to help get us to a place where we're ready to share with all of you the budget information that we have this evening. Of course, one of the most important pieces of information on the other side of the house, right, I'm talking about the cost side, but are the revenues. So there's not a lot we can do about that until the governor releases her budget. And I think it's the 3rd Wednesday in January when that is released. So those initial revenues are really important. But again, as everyone around the table knows, those revenues change constantly between January until when the budget is put into place sometime in early July. I know it's been later than that in some fiscal years. So we too, like you, are kind of dealing with that ebb and flow of what those changes look like as they work their way through the legislature. So more specifically, these are the strategic priorities as it relates to materials, right? So again, we kind of talk about the materials and then we talk about the positions. So this is the material side of the house, so to speak. As our community knows, we take our curriculum piece of the work very serious. What you may have heard or seen in some places, usually curriculum is the first place that gets cut when there are budget reductions. We do not do that in BMR. That's actually, I think, would be a detriment to the work that our teachers need to do in the classrooms every day. The curriculum are the tools and resources the teachers need in order to instruct. So we have a really tight revision and renewal cycle. And this year we're focused on literacy, but we're taking, as Jill mentioned, a little bit of a different approach. We're kind of taking a 2-year approach. This year we're looking at just replacing the middle grades literacy program, but leaving kind of the bookends the way they are, and focusing more closely on a really consistent and coherent PK to 12 set of writing expectations, rubrics, genres across the board so that they actually build. So we did something a little different this year. Our curriculum committee was not necessarily the traditional kind of literacy committee that we've had in the past. These folks were focused specifically on writing, and that is it. And they are still hard at work on that. So lots of good work happening in that space. But we know there's some work that needs to be, materials that need to be purchased and put in place for next year. our assessment system. Those of you that either have little ones in the school system or have had little ones in the system, you have probably heard of the STAR assessment, maybe with a smile, maybe with a frown, depending on your kind of piece to it. We spent a lot of time. We meet with our students multiple times a year, but one of the things that we do is we actually have students on our district leadership team from all 3 buildings. So we have our little ones up to our high school kids, and we meet with them at minimum 3 times a year as a district leadership team. They meet in their school every couple weeks with their principal, but we bring them all together kind of like this, and we actually look at our data together from kindergarten all the way through high school with the students, with members of our instructional leadership team, which are our staff, the instructional coaches, principals, etc. And through a lot of conversation with the kids, they brought to us, is there a way we can look at assessment different? And so we are. So we took a little bit of a different approach this year in terms of utilizing our unit tests and our quarterly exams to replace our math STAR assessment. And so we're still in the midst of that and seeing, how that's working. We have a district instructional leadership team meeting on March 18th where the students will be presenting, which we are very much looking forward to and seeing the progress that we are making. I should also mention that in those conversations, we look at the aggregate, so we look at all kids, but we do pull out those subgroups of students that look specifically at our English language learners, our students with special needs, students that are getting reading intervention, but they may not qualify for either ELL services or may not qualify for special education services. So we actually look at the data broken down so we can get a really good lens on how the kids are actually performing, not just overall, but within specific groups. We look at both achievement and growth. And we do it with our students, which I think is really powerful. They'll tell you, the kids will tell you, like, this is what's working, and this teacher needs to stop doing that because that's not working. So they'll be very blunt and forward with us. But there's still lots of work to do in terms of getting that assessment system just right. We are looking to implement 2 items off of our year 1 of our 5-year capital plan, which Joe will talk about in a few minutes. So you'll see those items come up, and you'll also see the first year of that capital plan. So those are present in the FY26 budget, as far as they're not in the budget numbers, but they will be articles that we'll be looking to add to the warrants for town meeting. Increasing after school and summer school programming. Just so that if any of our parents are tuning in at home, I think it's important to know we have a before school program for kindergartners. It started out looking at students in K that didn't go to preschool. The challenge of a kindergarten teacher is one of the largest challenges in the system because they're getting students that have had home daycare, students that have had BMR preschool, students that have had private preschool, students that have had no school. And all 22 show up on day 1, so to speak. So we started a before school program specifically for students that didn't have preschool to see if there was ground that we needed to make up, but we've since expanded it, so we've got about 20 students. We just ran a February camp, which was great. We only had 18 kids participate, but it's a start. So we had students come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for enrichment, for athletic opportunities with our athletic director. It was really great for the kids that participated. They loved it. And we do extensive summer programming through 21st Century, which is a grant. You may have heard us mention it before. Our allocation is about $170,000 a year that we are able to use to run this program. It's paid for through the federal government, through the state. And it's you might have heard that 21st CCLC, 21st Century Learning Center is what that stands for. But we're always looking to expand programming, so we're looking to build off of that after-school programming and summer programming as well, and increasing support for students with some behavioral needs. So on to the staffing side of the priorities. All of the numbers you're looking at right now are the projected numbers for next school year. So we rolled up the existing numbers that are in our classrooms right now, with the exception of K. Our census is looking like we'll be right around about 110 kindergarten students. And what you will see for the elementary grades is the grade level, so kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. And then right next to that, you'll see the number of teachers that we have at that grade level, the number of students, and then the number of students per class. So you'll notice that next year it is projected that we'll have Our 5 kindergarten teachers, about 110 kindergarten students, 22 K students overall in each classroom. We do have an instructional assistant in each of our kindergarten classrooms. That's important to note. For first grade, we'll have 5 teachers, 100 students, and about 20 students in each classroom. Grades 2 and 3, I want you to remember these numbers because we are, in our budget, does have an additional second grade and an additional third grade teacher. We ran into this problem or this challenge this year where we thought we would be able to work with the numbers we had, and then for whatever reason, it's just kind of the luck of the draw, you end up with an influx of families. Unfortunately, it tends to be the last week in August, right before we're about to start. I think people are making their last minute changes and families are getting settled in for the school year. And this year in second and third grade, or in first and second grade, we saw an increase there. So we were able to absorb some of that in first grade because we have 5 teachers, but looking forward into second grade next year, that's not going to be the case. We are asking in our budget for an additional second and an additional third grade teacher. That'll keep our K through third grade classrooms all right around 20. It also gives a little bit of wiggle room. If you have 4 or 5 families move in, we have the space to spread those students out across our classrooms.
So the 4 and the 4 excludes the additional teachers, correct?
That's right.
Yes,
Yep,
thank you.
that's right. That would be if what we have now
That would get you
stood.
down to the 20.
That's right.
Understood.
At the middle school, again, it's a little bit different. 4th and 5th grade run like elementary classrooms, but the 6th and 7th grade run as teams. So you can see the overall class sizes there. But what we're looking to do is actually add an electives teacher. We have a lot of opportunity at the middle school, but one of the things that we found this year, we had a good problem. We had so many kids that went out for band and chorus. It left us with a group of about 70 students across the upper grades that actually needed an elective. So we were able to put in virtual middle school for the 7th graders this year and do a different enrichment opportunity with the 6th graders. But we really need a electives teacher for the middle school. One of the things you might remember when we went through last year's reduction, we reduced, and we'll talk about it in a moment, but we reduced our staffing by 18 and a half positions, full-time positions. 11 of those were classroom teachers, and the rest were administrators or support staff like nurses, custodians, etc. So we are looking to bring back 6 of those 11 positions. And because our enrollment is increasing, we actually will have the means to do so. High school, we have another good problem on our hands. This is the first time in a long time we actually will have over 100 students in every grade level at BMR. We are seeing tremendous success with having our 8th graders at the high school. We typically have anywhere between 60 and 65 applications to BVT. This year we have 22. And I think that's important for all of you sitting around the table because, as you know, on the town side, you all get the tuition bills for that. Our thought of bringing the students up to the high school, getting them plugged into the high school program of studies, the pathways of which we were just awarded. I was with the governor on Thursday and the Secretary of Education. BMR was just awarded the Environmental Sciences Innovation Pathway. We are one of only 100 high schools out of the 400 plus in the Commonwealth that have an innovation pathway status. So a huge shout out to our high school. And I know it was a great event. We were at Athol High School, and some of you might remember Matt Aaronworth, our former assistant he's a superintendent there. So he also was awarded a pathway, which is kind of neat. So we had an opportunity to be there together to be given that grant. So with that, next year we are projecting about 135 8th graders, about 111, and that's reducing 25 8th graders moving into 9th grade. You can see our numbers for 10th grade, about 120, our juniors, and then we'll have about 102 seniors. We are working, just as an aside, with the MSBA. Those of you that are part of the school building committee, the enrollment piece has been a question for quite some time because their enrollment projections have been so low for a potential project. So we are working with them on this as our numbers continue to, at minimum, stabilize, but as we're seeing here this evening, hopefully increase. So with that, this is what we currently have for staffing. We have, for all of these students, these are our core teachers, and then our 9 elective teachers. You can see the numbers there. We need to bring back, I say bring back because we reduced last year, we need to bring back a social studies teacher, we need to bring back a science teacher, and an electives teacher for next year. So you'll see that for the new FTEs, 3 of those we want to send to BMR.
Jason, the ratios, as you have for the lower grades, the student teacher ratio for the high school?
They're a little harder to do because it's course specific. So some of it you can do like an aggregate, like 8th grade's easy. 9th grade core classes like English, math, science, those are easier to do, but where you run into the challenge is that you have college prep honors or AP. And so the numbers are different in each one of those sections. So you might look and see, we've got 10 kids in AP stats, but you might have 30 students or 28 students in, honors geometry. So we certainly can, but it's not as clean as the other groups because it's specific to the course.
All right, now we're going to move on to the finance part of it. The first slide that you're looking at, the first slide of finance here is looking back at FY25, what was done to help consolidate the buildings and what that impact was on the district. As you know, there was a significantly increased minimum local contribution last year to both towns, 6.8% and 5.2%. That's the state, they said to do that. At the same time, Chapter 78 was a minimal increase of 0.9%, which I guess has been pretty consistent over the years here, between $50,000 and $90,000 every year for increases. With the reconfiguration that came through, that was done, there was a total savings of about $2.3 million. And that represented, as Dr. DeFalco was talking, 18 and a half FTEs, full-time equivalent positions, were cut with that reconfiguration. 11 of those were teachers. And you can see on the bottom what makes up all those cuts. And then the supplies and materials were saved just under $1 million. So that represented a $2.3 million savings overall to the district. So in the process, it's my first time going through the entire budget process here at Blackstone Millville. And the 2 things that stuck out to me when we started doing this process, and one was the main priority was the kids, making sure we could provide a good, adequate, actually excelling education for our kids, but also was how do we limit the impact on the towns in doing that. With higher enrollment comes higher costs, so we needed to take a look and see what we could do. So I tried to lay out here the revenue sources that we'll be using and how we'll be using those revenues to reduce that impact to both the towns. One thing that's happening to us, which is great, we're going to see an increase in our Chapter 70 aid of over $600,000. It's a 6% increase over last year. And that's mainly done because of the fact that we've moved out of hold harmless status with the state. And all that means is our enrollment has gone up. Some of the calculations they use for increases has increased from 2 to 3% to 6%. And the increase in low-income students, while not a good thing, does affect the funding formula and how much funding we will get. So this basically, it's a one-time increase. This isn't going to be $600,000 every year. It's just going to be this one time where we moved out of hold harmless, then things should normalize.
But Joe, this is our new floor.
That's right. Now we're in foundation aid. This is the floor that we'll be at. We should not drop below that. We should only grow from that based on foundation aid. So that was one of the ways that will minimize some impact. Some other revenue sources we looked at was the entitlement grants. These are our federally funded grants. IDEA preschool grants, about $22,000. We don't have our actual award for next year yet, but they've been $22,000 is right about where they're at. We're going to use that to partially fund, almost all fully fund, a preschool instructional assistant. Our IDEA entitlement grant for special education, that's our highest grant. It's $460,000. We'll use $400,000 of that to offset the collaborative tuitions from these kids that are coming in out of district that Jill had mentioned. $33,000 for contracted services and $23,000 for special ed supplies. So we'll be able to reduce the impact on the general fund by that amount. Our Title IV grant is $15,000. We'll use that money to provide supplies for our social emotional learning. Title I, $213,000. We're going to fund 2.3 FTEs of our reading interventionists with that funding. And Title II, $35,000 we'll use to offset mentor stipends and mentor supplies. Go to the next page for revenue source. Some other areas that we'll be using offsets are circuit breaker. $733,030. We'll be using that to offset our private school special education tuitions. Regional transportation reimbursements, we're going to use $856,952 to offset our transportation costs. Some other areas that we're looking to reduce the impact, DESE allows us to prepay some of our up to 3 months worth of our collaborative tuitions each year for the next fiscal year. We're going to utilize $350,000 of this year's budget to prepay for next year. That'll reduce those collaborative expenses for next year. I jokingly said at one of our meetings that we're basically turning up the couch cushions here to try to find as much money as we can. When I got here, we took a look at all the funds that the district has, and there are some smaller funds, various funds, special revenue funds that are just carrying a fund balance year over year. We don't really even use these funds anymore in most cases. So the total of those funds that we have access to, if we utilize that, will be $90,000. So we pull all that money together, put it into one fund that we can offset some more expense with, and we'll use up those funds too to make sure we can actually liquidate those and close out those funds moving forward if we're not using them anymore. We also took a look at our supplies and our consumables that we have in stock this year to see where we're at, and we should be able to inventory that stock that we're not going to use in preparation for next year. So we'll carry that forward. That's going to be about $270,000 worth of supplies and materials that we'll keep from this year and carry forward to next year. So the total reduction with all of these ongoing revenues and one-time revenues is about $3 million. It's exactly $3,659,040 that we were able to reduce in the from the general fund portion and the impact to the town. In the next section, unless anybody has any questions on that.
I just want to like a comment on that, like the special revenue funds that we closed out.
Yes.
Like one of them would have been a Kennedy School stage curtain replacement
Right.
fund from like 1967 for like 1,500. Like, a lot of those were just cleaned up that were never used.
It'll be nice to clean up the GL too, not have to worry about those funds anymore. So the next slide we're going into is the budget workbook, and in there you should have this packet here. And I know that's the page, the proposed budget page that everybody looks at. Okay, and we even said maybe we should just put that one slide up. Right? But I'll run through this real quick too. Up on the top, you're going to see our school choice sending and charter school sending tuitions. That's the preliminary that we've received from the state. That could change up or down. And then all the other costs. So our total budget is $32,054,718. We're going to use, we have about just over $500,000 of excess and deficiencies. $50,000 of that has been allocated for OPEB payment. And the remaining balance, 100% of that will be used to help offset some expense. We'll use all of the E&D this year. You'll see our Chapter 70 receipts is just over $12 million. There's the regional, these are the other items I just went through, the regional transportation of $856. School choice receipts, 100, again, it's preliminary, but $181,000. Charter school reimbursement, $222,000. Then you'll see our entitlement grants, the preschool grant of $22,000, the IDEA special ed grant for $460,000, Title IV for $15,000, Title I for $213,000, and Title II for $35,000. You'll also see on here the circuit breaker of $733,000 to bring us to a total state revenue of $14,818,340. The other revenue sources down below, you'll see we have some athletic revenue coming in of $15,000, And pre-K, the pre-K fund, we're going to use $395,000 of the pre-K fund. And that's not fully exhausting that fund. They'll leave a little bit of a cushion to go into the future years. Rental of classrooms, we're projecting to use about $100,000. Medicaid revenue is at $190,000. Athletic user fees, $72,000. Music user fees, $10,000. And obviously the one-time revenues I spoke of $90,000 for $872,233. If you look down below at the percentage increase over FY25, with the budget we have in place right now, even with the positions that we're asking for, Blackstone's increase in assessment is 3.95%, while Millville's increase in the assessment is 2.54%. So we're easy. We did a lot of digging to find a way to keep those numbers as low as we possibly could.
Joe, excuse
Yes.
me. The prepaid collaborative tuitions, where's that? Where do you group that on the revenues?
That's not on here. It's going to be a direct reduction of what we would have budgeted.
Oh, it's an offset
That's
to
right.
cost.
That's
Gotcha.
right.
Okay, thank you.
That's built into that
Yep.
32 million.
And your percentages are the overall including capital,
That's correct.
the deltas, yep.
So go to the further down, if you want it, we have the detailed information by function code here.
Joe, can I jump in real quick? Just one quick thing. So if you look on the FY26 proposed budget sheet, you'll see, as Joe mentioned, the breakdowns for FY25 and then the breakdowns for FY26 right next to it. And then you'll see the change all the way to the right. So you can see the actual change for Blackstone as far as the minimum local contribution of 467,166, the exclusionary 2964. The additional is 16,060. The capital's down 41,268, and then the total is an increase in $471,022. And similarly, Millville is right below. Millville's MLC was increased by 148,000, but through the work that we've done, the overall increase for Millville is 99,557. So that gives just a general sense of where from 25 to 26 where we landed.
If I could just add to that, the change in the minimum local contribution alone, this is what the state requires the two towns to pay. Blackstone's change from that line item alone is an increase of $467,166. The total increase overall for Blackstone is $471,022. Millville was the mandate to pay more on just the minimum local contribution is $148,000. They're being asked to increase over last year by just $99,557. So if anybody's not familiar, the formula with the state is not the same formula that we have in the regional agreement. That's only for the additional request for the additional contribution. So,
Are there any contracts pending?
what's that,
Are there any contracts still pending that would affect this budget?
Mr. Superintendent?
Yep, Unit A. We're currently negotiating Unit A contract. But on Thursday, the budget, if all goes well, the budget will be certified on this Thursday, the 6th.
Jason, with the settlement of the union contracts, does this current budget reflect any increase, or does it take into account what the ultimate settlement might be?
We're prepared to negotiate with Unit A, and we'll certify the budget on Thursday, and those are the resources we have.
So is it possible that you might have to come back for
No.
supplemental funding?
We have, in my 7 years, we have never come back to the town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my plan.
Okay.
Not Jason, but his first year here was a super town meeting. That was because of.
That wasn't my fault.
But that wasn't,
I'm not owning
that was a member of the town of Blackstone increasing, taking from the library and giving it to the school.
So the plan would be no.
All right, so again, you have detailed. We also did break out the projected expenses by location, by building. Then we go into the capital. This page here does give you the breakout of the capital and how it was broken out by each town, okay, for you to look at. But the slide itself will go into a quick summary. Capital assessments for FY '26 is the total principal and interest for Blackstone has decreased 11%. It'd be $339,984. For Millville, it decreased 4% down to $163,984 for a total assessment of $503,968. And as you know, the middle school bond was paid off in August, so that's a big reduction there. But it also includes the $500,000 ban that we're going through right now for borrowing for the feasibility study. So that's in here now. Actually, it's just been uploaded and it's getting approved. We should have that ban within days. So that's everything that's there.
Is that the only thing that you're using a ban for? The feasibility study, everything else is bonded?
No, we still have the Millville boiler project, I believe. That's a ban, and also the JFK, I think that was a roofing project, if I'm not mistaken.
It was the windows, boilers, and doors.
There'll be 3 bans at that point in time.
But you've been paying down on the debt
Yes.
as a ban,
Yes,
correct?
that's
So
correct.
like if I look at Millville's boiler, 677 grand.
Yep.
That's the balance of a ban as of whatever date you're
That's
looking
correct.
at here. And those amounts don't, like, we don't know, or the amounts of the what would I call, the amortized amounts that might be due MSBA, should they not be happy about facilities. You follow what I'm asking?
I do, but I don't
You
have
don't
that
know
number.
That's not on here, yeah, I
Yeah.
can't quite, okay.
Hopefully that will not be the case.
Understood, agreed.
The other piece of this is our 5-year capital plan. I did include, yours happens to be in black and white, and I apologize, but this other document does have our 5-year capital plan in it. But it also shows what we're looking for year one. Obviously, we can't do everything that we need, so we went through and decided to pick out the 2 items that are most important right now. We need to keep up on the capital, we need to keep up on these things before they become a bigger detriment to us. Next year, we'll be looking for a $70,000 approval for playground equipment for this school, age-appropriate playground equipment for grades 4 and 5. In addition, our sander and plow truck, it's a big vehicle. It's really on its last legs. We've been putting a lot of money in that thing, trying to keep it running. It's pretty much rotting where it is. We're looking to replace that with another plow truck. This amount is based on an estimate we've received so far, but we're still continuing to look at other options. We'll get more estimates from different dealerships. We'll even look at some used vehicles, see if there's anything we can save some money there too. So I would look at that as more of a not to exceed amount than anything else. And unless you have any questions for me, that's pretty much it.
The year one plan has some substantial expenditures or some projections for the JFK playground, and there's substantial capital investment projected for this school. How much anticipation is going into these capital reviews? If we look at the plan that was submitted, the two building plan that's on the table right now, if that goes according to plan, if the feasibility study bears that plan out, and you move ahead, how much of this stuff would have to change? Because at that point, you're triggering a substantial renovation of this building to accommodate a lower group of kids, age groups. So is there any projection, or is there any secondary plan for taking that into account?
Well, we're not actually projecting what the construction would be included in this building to fit the kids if they're lower grades. That is not in here, not until we know for sure what we're going to do. But what we are doing is some of the things that we can do that we know will, like the playground equipment, that'll benefit no matter what the plan is. So no, we're not looking at what it would cost in construction to make this building fit for lower grades, if that was the model we went to.
Right.
But we're also not investing a lot of money. That's why we picked the two programs, two plans that we have. It's for this school, for the middle school, and the plow truck, which is kind of district-wide. So we're not putting a lot of investment into the complex right now, in case.
Okay. Well, given that the feasibility study is supposed to be done by October, I believe, end of October, at that point, would a lot of this have to be reviewed?
I think so. I think we're going to see some shifts in terms of priorities. My sense is some things might actually move up the line.
Right.
Right, depending upon what direction the community wants to go in. And then some things will obviously probably fall off, frankly, altogether. When we submitted the two building model, this was 2019. I know you were part of those conversations, Jeff. 2019, 2020 dollars. It was just over $7 million to retrofit for the little toilets and all the little, the plumbing and all the things that the little ones would need.
Right.
My sense is, like everything else, it's probably gone up quite a bit. Right. But with that, what might there be an opportunity there to look at the roof in addition, to look at the windows that need to be redone? I think so. So I think to your question, I think some of these will be reprioritized.
Okay.
Selectman Pollock. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Selectman Pollock had a question.
Yeah, just in terms of, like, we're just talking about the school building thing, and I know that's going to take some years for that to come to fruition. So my question is, how many years of use are we going to get out of this playground equipment if we do this next year, based on when we go to town funding? Yeah.
In this building here. So
Yeah.
I don't see a configuration where this building is not a significant player in that, and that wouldn't have elementary students in it. So I would assume that in all of the configurations we'll look at, we'll have at minimum the grade span that we have here now. And I say minimum because we still have space here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The other question that I have is regarding JFK in particular. If this plan moves forward, the two-building plan, then JFK sort of disappears from your range of buildings. Is there any plan, or is there any planning going on for what's going to be done with that building?
So this
When the high school is modernized and this building is modernized?
So we'll cross that bridge when we get to this. We'd like to go through the budget and capital requests that are going to be over $35,000 over 5 years in existing school buildings that we don't plan on, we plan on keeping in the district. So both these capital item requests, the playground is in a district-owned property, and the plow truck will be for district-owned clearing it. And by the way, the plow truck should have been replaced about 3 years ago, if not longer. So that conversation, the bigger conversation of this is a budget summit, and I understand. And by the way, we will make sure you have the copy of this 5-year, to supplement your town's one. But I just don't want to get too far off, because we can go on and on for hours about what we're going to do with this school building or that school building. But we're not doing anything without the funding for the school buildings that we're currently occupying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another question.
Selectman Pollock.
Just looking at the 5-year review chart, so you also have playground equipment for JFK. Is that also, like, the plan is to replace some of that in the next year too?
So that's a town-owned building, so we just put together what an estimate would be because we've heard from a lot of families some, challenges with that playground. So we had an estimate.
And that was intentionally not presented to the towns because of the uncertainty of the town, I should say, uncertainty of the future of the.
Yeah, that's
property.
kind of why I was asking, was because, yes, from like the state, like I know the condition of that, but thinking if whatever happens in the future with the grade reconfiguration in this building, if it, whatever went in at that facility, if it was able to be moved here later on down the line, if that makes sense. If we, like, whatever the feasibility study and all that stuff says, like later, if we went forward and updated some of that equipment, could it actually be repurposed and moved here later on?
Depending on the ownership of the equipment.
Okay.
That's also
Okay.
another conversation.
Yeah, right, that's fair.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, so this page, the 5-year review, the only 2 things that we're putting in the
That's right.
budget are the
Yeah.
2 that we talked about.
Yeah.
Everything else is just an FYI.
And there will be a warrant article that you'll be providing at a later date for each town to address,
Yes.
correct? Can I ask some questions about the budget real quick? And I just want to appreciate all the hard work that went into this. I recognize the work that goes into this. And I appreciate getting a preview. Jason and Joe came to visit with me today, and I was sworn to secrecy not to tell anybody what I was looking at.
Put it on Twitter right after the meeting.
I did
Right
not,
after.
but I did have a little smile on my face, so they saw something there. But I did get a chance to look a little closer at the materials, and I find the page after this page very helpful because it breaks down by, cost category and compares to last year's. And, so just one question I have and a comment. One question is on your health plan. Who's your health plan with, and what's the rate of increase that you're expecting?
With Maya.
Maya,
And
okay.
Blue Cross and Blue Shields, they recommended 16%.
16.
We budgeted 11.
Oh.
And we're in the process now of going out to bid. We just met with 3 bidders
okay.
this afternoon.
Because that kind of relates to my observation in looking at the details. You have over $1 million in substitute teacher costs, which relates probably to their, experience category, experience in the
Right.
health plan usage. It's a big number, and I'm just, wow, I just hadn't noticed that before. Big number.
Right, and now with the way the budget is now, it's broken out by DESI function code. It's more
Okay.
accurate to what DESI's requiring
Yeah.
for our year-end reporting. So you will see more detail in there. And that substitute number is just what's happened over 3 years, the growth that we've seen in absenteeism and then sub-needs. And it actually includes fill-ins too. It's not directly substitutes. So that's why you see that increase in there.
Every school committee meeting, as Joe has been working on this, we vote to adjust. So everything's categorized where, in the bucket that it belongs.
Oh, in terms of where it
Yeah, so
belongs.
so we've been doing that for probably 7 or 8 months. Now, it just makes it easier to track and
as the water boy in Millville, I can't help but notice how you've categorized the facility costs, and you've identified the facility for the elementary schools. The cost is lumped in some. You haven't taken a vote on that yet. I understand that. Hopefully, at some point, we'll all be where you gotta be to make that happen. But the other piece is just that in the JFK, or the admin building, wherever it winds up, right? Because your budget is a 3-school solution plus an admin building. That's $240,000 a cost, if I'm understanding the numbers here, to be in that building, and part of that's defensive against MSBA coming at you. I get that, but that's $240,000 for a building for low utilization, and Millville's facing a pretty darn big override, so we're looking for shekels everywhere we can, and there's shekels there. So I just point that out as another observation looking at the materials I had a chance to play with.
Just to respond to that real quick. We make the assumption, obviously, that everybody's coming back to MES.
Understood.
That's in here. But the way I do, you're gonna, now you're seeing electricity, telephone, everything allocated to the buildings where they belong. And it's all done by square footage right now.
Yes.
So it may be that this, if it's only admin, again, we still have to heat it, we still have to do the electricity.
Yeah.
It's really all those fixed costs that we don't have any
You
option
can't make
to do.
those go away.
Oh, I wish we
Maybe
could,
some,
believe
but
me.
not the bulk, yeah.
I mean, even the custodial costs, somebody's gonna have to keep up on the building, or else if you don't, it's just gonna fall apart
gonna-
and become worse. So that's really where that comes from.
Understood.
it's been a balance of keeping in compliance with MSBA so that the towns don't get, we've been very proactive
Yes.
with the town, like with Millville and the situation, and working with you to make sure that
Right.
that those penalties are not, they've been very cooperative, so.
BMR signed the agreements with MSB? Oh, just kidding.
We also need.
We don't do anything without approval from the towns. You guys approve it first at town meeting before any signatures go on the paper.
I had a quick question on the capital, because it says right up at the top, the middle school debt, and that was paid off in August, which is great. But that 3.135 million, that was what Blackstone and Millville together paid for the school building? $3 million?
18 cents on the dollar, if I remember correctly, when it was built, is what
Okay.
the towns paid.
Wow.
My father was on
Does
that
not
building
include
school committee.
interest. That's just the issue amount.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was 18 cents on the dollar is what we paid for this.
So we had 82% covered by MSBA?
It was SBA at the time, yeah. It
SBA.
was a different, it was a
Yeah.
different plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're now looking at 60, I think a 60%, 59, 60%
Yeah.
reimbursement, is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
The namesake of the school was walking out of the building when I was walking in. Mr.
Yes,
Hartnett
he was
walking
here.
in, yeah.
Here.
Okay. I just curious. Thank you.
Should see how Mr. Cullen got that Millville Elementary School for almost nothing for the town of Millville as well, back in the early, not late 80s, early 90s.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I have another question? Peter brought up the issue of absenteeism. Is there anything you guys can do about that? Are there any options that would reduce absenteeism?
Absenteeism regards to
Teachers?
So we do,
oh.
yeah, so we have a strong plan in place regarding meeting with teachers, notifying teachers. Our HR office actually has a whole protocol that she follows, working with the building principal to sit down. It ebbs and flows, but we see, currently we're seeing quite a bit of FMLA, so we're seeing some actual family medical issues across the district for varying reasons. And we have quite a few younger staff members, so I'm assuming that over the next few years, if all things fall into place, they will be out on FMLA, having children and things, which will be a good thing for all of us. So I'm assuming that we're going to see those numbers probably increase too. Yeah.
I have another really specific question that's maybe more for Jill, selfishly. Are the Mass Pack dues factored into this budget?
We have that through our special ed funding.
Okay.
It's not a specific line item, but.
But like, just it is in there though? I was told to ask the questions tonight.
It's Joe, right?
Yes. So I'm looking at this page right here. My eyes aren't what they used to be, but one of the lines for the fiscal year 26 request is at 0, and it looks like it's classroom teachers regular. I just wanted to get some clarification on that, if I'm missing it somewhere else
2310?
on 2310.
2310.
Three class to
That,
2305.
that money was just reclassified properly. 2310 is not a legitimate function code at
got it.
DESI.
Gotcha.
It's actually 2305.
Gotcha.
And actually, and that was even split further into between special ed and regular ed. But that's how the budget was certified in 25, so I wanted to make sure I left it alone.
Gotcha. Okay.
We've been learning this as we've gone along for the last several months. I guess we're getting coded appropriately.
We did well without a financial director for 2
did
years.
very
We
well.
are doing much better with a financial.
Let's see.
We were flying
Pass this
solo for
budget,
2
we'll be
years.
fine.
We're not changing the codes for any other reason other than to be in compliance. As Peter may think that we may be.
Oh, no, no.
He doesn't even like to change the line descriptions in our budget. He's like, don't mess with the model.
I told you to print it smaller.
That's right. That's right. I'm done. That's it for me.
And then just our next steps, public hearing and a school committee certification on Thursday, 6 PM here. And then we'll start putting together the budget, certified budget workbooks next week, if all goes as planned. And then we're happy to attend any Board of Selectmen meetings or finance subcommittee meetings that you all might want us to attend. And then, of course, the annual town meeting.
In the Millville Board of Selectmen, that's, we heard your call for nothing over 3%.
Thank you.
After we did this budget, but we still.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Anybody else have anything to add? Lauren? No? Sure? All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Tanya. Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Then we'll get a workshop.
Thank you.
And we have a workshop.